welcome to FeelGoodArtWorks. Please like and subscribe this video if you appreciate me making it, and hopefully I'll be able to make some more. It is a beautiful Friday in Seattle today. It's a little overcast, but there's a chance that the sun will come out at some point. I've been working on a new design. I was basically playing with some new paints that I acquired, and I'll show you those in a few moments. But the whole point of this one was just to see what kind of cells I could get using a little Floetrol and just the paints and a little bit of patience. And as you can see, it came out pretty well. It was greens and a couple of blues, and I threw in some yellow there because that's always a good color on the color wheel that offsets any blues and greens. A warm color to offset a cold blue and a green. So after I got the basic swipe across, I thought to myself, well, what could I make from this? Could I make a crocodile? Could I make a pair of boots? Could I make a lizard? And I came down to potentially making a dragon. There's a shape here of what looks like a face turning around. So now I've got the opportunity to create the dragon looking back on itself. And I've created some claws, front, left and right claws, and the back claw, or the back leg, that would be showing if it was profile to this. And of course the tail then comes across the back and wraps around and rolls into this nice blue piece. So I'm trying to use as much of the color and natural elements of this paint sample, if you like, to create the piece itself, which is always the fun part with acrylic abstract painting, because you never really know what you're going to come up with despite having an initial concept. So I've started to do it the other way around. I'll play with colors and techniques and then decide what I'm going to do in terms of the context itself. Now, in order to preserve what I already had there in terms of these beautiful cells, and I'll show you the close-ups here, look how these things evolved. Absolutely gorgeous from top to tail, excuse the pun. But when it comes to the things like the claws, I want to be able to isolate the cells and the colors that are going to be used for the claws. And so it's going to come over the work that I've done already. And I think I might use a hot glue gun to separate those out. And you'll see what I mean when I start to do this. That way it'll give me the opportunity to create cells within specific areas on the painting, as opposed to across the whole thing. Now, I'm going to show you some of the trusty things that I've been using, or I'm going to be using for this painting. The product descriptions will all be on the description of the video, so you can go in there and check those out if you want to acquire these products and give it a try yourself. So I'm using my pencils. I usually have a range of pencils, artist pencils, because the graphite's different for each one. Some of them are softer, some of them are harder, but having a good range provides you some versatility when you're drawing on top of color, for example, so you can see that a little bit clearer than you would if it was an H2 pencil. I'm using a 12-inch by 24-inch gallery canvas by Artist Loft. I'm using a Yupo board so I can create samples and swatches and mix my paints a little easier, because this is going to need a little bit of shading and toning, and then also I'm going to use some silicone in here to create the actual cells to look like the scales on the dragon I meant. Guys, I really appreciate you watching these videos. I would love to hear your comments about what I'm doing and what you'd like to see, but do please click subscribe and like the video if you do actually like the video, and that will make me and our cat here, Sapphire, very happy. Right, Sapphire? When it comes to the paints today, I'm going to be using a Payne's Grey from Amsterdam. I'm going to be using a turquoise from Amsterdam, and I'm going to use the Arteza range. These are pearl effects, come in lime green, sea green, turquoise, and ocean blue for this. And yes, they're iridescent, and yes, they're very pretty when they come out in the paint. In fact, on the Yupo board, you can see how I've been using these and testing some of these out over the last few days, and these are the effects that you're going to get with it. So I'm quite excited that when I mix some of these paints and then I put a drop of silicone in them to make the cells, this is going to come out real well. I'm using acrylic pour oil as the silicone cell maker. I'm going to sketch the design, or I've started to sketch the design anyway, using these pencils. I probably might do a little bit more as we go through the process. My trusty kitchen roll and my paintbrush set. So, come along for the journey. I'm looking forward to having you with me. So now I'm going to walk you through mixing my paints. I'm basically using the Arteza Pearl paints, as I've mentioned before. I'm going to mix 4 of them with these colors that are shown on the screen. Again, the description of these products are in the description of the video, if you want to go out and buy them yourselves. Beautiful shades, beautiful tones. And I'm mixing them with my pouring medium, which is essentially golden gel gloss and water. So first of all, I'm going to take a little bit of the paint. I'm not going to use too much. Maybe just cover the bottom of the cup. These are little 2-ounce cups that I've purchased with a lid, so that if I don't use them, I can always save them for another day. I should have done that before I started the video. There we go. Put a little in there. Third one. Trying to get them roughly even, but it doesn't matter if they're not. You can always make up some more. You can always make up more. You can't take away. So, always a good thing to make a little under, in my opinion. I tend to have a lot of these lying around with various amounts of paint in them. So there's all 4 paints. And when it comes to mixing them, what I'm going to do is use these little tiny spoons that are really helpful. Now, I'm going to cover the paint with the pouring medium, which means they're going to be fairly loose, fairly thin. But again, don't put too much in, because you can always add more. You can't take away. So now we just have to take it slowly, mix, 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 mix. I find if you start off pretty slow, you don't get as much splashing, because that's not what you want. And this is the part where I usually wear gloves, but these are so small. These amounts are so small, I'm just not going to bother this time. It starts to come together fairly quickly. The paint will start to disintegrate in the little cup. Maybe you can see that starting to disintegrate. But the easiest way to do it is simply take the spoon and force it up the sides. That breaks down, so it helps break down the paints easier. And as the paint breaks down and mixes into the pouring medium, the color will start to show. And it won't look quite as white as it did initially. There you go, there's a splash that I was telling you about. And so the perfect reason for wearing gloves, and of course having lots of kitchen roll around so you can wipe it off. So what I've noticed is using these little spoons probably isn't the best thing, because the paint accumulates within the little spoon itself. What I usually use are popsicle sticks, and I think those are ideal because they're flat. You're not going to get the paint accumulating within the stick itself. But for now, this is doing the job. It's just going to take a little bit more work to make sure it's coming together. So I've been stirring this for about 30 seconds to a minute. It's pretty much broken down. I'm going to keep going until I feel like it's perfectly broken down. And I'll speed this up so you don't have to sit through this whole thing.
Feel the magic take its hold. Brush strokes wild, like stories untold. The canvas whispers, the truth unfolds. Feel good arcs for everyone. A splash of joy, a streak of sun. Messy hands and heads and dawn. Feel good arcs for sculpt the clay, let it spin. Shape the world from deep within. No right, no wrong, just begin. Every curve hides where you've been. Drip, drop, scatter, spray.
Now each one of these in real time is taking me about 3 or 4 minutes to break down and get the consistency that I'm looking for. And honestly, this is where the patience comes in with acrylic painting. Everything about acrylic painting is patience and planning, because when you think about what you're doing here, you're mixing different materials together, which is basically a lesson in chemistry. So if you want the paints to break down real well, you've got to take the time to give them a good mix and take the time to make sure all the little bits are out of them. So you got to scrape around the bowls, around the bottom. You just got to keep stirring. And as I said, the best way to do this is to utilize the side, because not only can you see how it's breaking down, but you can also see the color coming together in the pouring medium much easier. Another point to make here is that you don't want to go crazy when you're stirring this like super fast, because as you can see here, you do get air bubbles, and you want to avoid air bubbles like the plague. Now there's ways you can get rid of these air bubbles by using a blowtorch very, very gently over the top afterwards, or a hairdryer works too. Obviously on a very low setting so you don't blow the paint everywhere. And the other mechanism you can use is just letting them sit for a couple of hours. That usually helps get rid of the paint. Get rid of the bubbles, I'm sorry.
Beneath the glass, where ripples hum, the world dissolves into the drum. A mirror sky, a liquid hue. I'm sinking deep in shades of blue. Vision of water, it's calling me through.
So the process for testing your paints is simply to use one of these testing sheets. I credit this to Olga Sobey as well. She's got them free on her website, so you can take a look at these and grab one of these. I'll put the link in the description. But essentially, you put a drop of paint in each one of those round circles at the top. You lift up the paper and you let it run. And assuming they all arrive at that test line at the same time, or within the bounds above and below, they're probably going to be okay. But you'll see which ones are faster and which ones are slower as I do the test. So simply do the same thing for each of your paints. Try and drop the same amount onto the test paper. And you want to try and fill that little bubble as best you can. Not always easy, but try not to get any more than you absolutely need. And now I'm just going to lift this up and watch them run. Now, as you can immediately see, that green comes a lot faster, which is, as I said, because I think it's a little thinner than the others. Now, if that green hits the test line and the others are in range, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But I think what I'm noticing here is that I'm going to need to put a little bit more paint into the green line if I want the same consistency. So it's reached the end of that range around the test line, and the others are not yet there. So that tells me that the green is significantly thinner than the other three, because the other three are almost identical. Maybe this one's a little slower, but the green one definitely needs to have some work done to it. So I might add a little bit more green paint to that. And at that point, I think they'll all be fairly consistent. And then you can throw this away. Now, the other tool that I use today that I've mentioned is a hot glue gun. And I've never used one of these before, so I'm going to test this out before I actually start using it on my painting. But it's basically a tool that you plug in, you buy the glue sticks for it, you stick it in there, and it applies heat to the end. So you get a little stream of glue that comes out. And I like this, it's got a little stand, so as any drips off of there, it'll drip onto a silicone board, and I can clean it off. So that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to doing this, but I'm going to try all this out before I even start using this on my painting, and I'll spare you the details on that one.
A splash of joy. create a masterpiece your way. Feel good art works for everyone. A splash of joy, a streak of song, messy hands and hearts undone. Feel good art works for everyone. Beneath the glass, where ripples Vision of water, it's calling me through. Vision of water in endless blue. It whispers my name, it bends the light. Vision of water, day turns to night. The silent tide, it falls. It breaks the current pulse. The silence waves, fingers of foam. They trace the shore, a moment lost forevermore. Drifting further, the echoes bloom. Lost in the rhythm under the moon. Vision of